everyone. Welcome back to Reddit Affair Diaries. How's your day going so far? I hope it's been great, but if not, don't stress, you're in the perfect spot to relax and dive into some juicy relationship stories. There's always something new and unexpected waiting around the corner here. Before we jump in, leave a comment and share something good from your day. Let's keep the good vibes going and start this story together.
This Reddit story update 1 from the r/relationship advice subreddit describes how the OP's father-in-law wrongly accused her of cheating on her husband.
A few weeks ago, my entire world seemed to crumble around me. It all started when my father-in-law, who has never liked me, told my husband that I was cheating on him. I couldn't believe it when Jake, my husband, didn't even ask for proof. He just assumed his dad was telling the truth and walked out on me, moving into his father's house. I was devastated. We had been married for just over 2 years, and I thought we had built something real, something solid. But one lie, one baseless accusation, was enough to make him doubt everything. He trusted his dad's word over mine without so much as a second thought. It felt like I was in a nightmare, trying to scream for help but finding that no one believed me. I begged Jake to at least ask his dad for proof, but all I got was cold silence. I was left alone, questioning everything, wondering if the life we had built together meant anything to him at all. Days passed, and the house felt emptier than ever. I cried until I was numb, replaying every argument, every conversation with Jake's dad. How had it come to this? I didn't know how to fix it, or if it was even possible to fix. But then, unexpectedly, Jake came back. He showed up at our doorstep, looking like a different person, tired, worn, but apologetic. He told me that he was sorry for not trusting me more, that he had been wrong to believe his dad's lies without proof. I could see the regret in his eyes, and a part of me wanted to believe him, to let it all be water under the bridge. But deep down, I knew things weren't going to be that simple. Apologies don't just erase the pain. Trust, once broken, doesn't snap back together overnight. I needed time to process everything, and I needed Jake to understand that. Yet, from the moment he moved back in, something felt off. It started with little things, awkward silences, forced conversations. And then Jake began talking obsessively about having a baby. At first, I thought it was a distraction, a way for him to avoid dealing with the damage we'd just gone through. He'd bring it up casually at first, mentioning how great it would be to start a family now, how he could see us having a child soon. I would gently remind him that I wasn't ready. I'm only 23. I love Jake, but after everything that just happened, the last thing I felt prepared for was bringing a baby into the mix. We had just barely come through one crisis, our relationship was still fragile, still healing. I thought he'd understand. But instead of hearing me, Jake became more and more fixated. It wasn't just a conversation topic anymore, it became all he talked about. At night, he'd pull me close, whispering how much he wanted us to start trying. During the day, he'd mention baby names, talk about nurseries, and bring up friends who had kids. It felt like pressure, and the more I told him I wasn't ready, the more frustrated he became. I tried explaining my feelings. I told him I needed more time, that we needed to focus on rebuilding what we had before we took that step. But instead of listening, Jake started to question me. He'd look at me suspiciously, asking why I didn't want a baby. He'd say things like, "If you love me, why wouldn't you want this?" Or, "Are you hiding something from me?" It was like we were back to square one, back to him not trusting me, not believing in me. I couldn't understand how we had gone from one betrayal to another so quickly. One night, after yet another argument about the baby, I broke down. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I told him how hurt I still was, how his leaving me had shattered my trust. I told him that I wasn't ready for a child, not because I didn't want to start a family with him, but because I needed to feel secure again. I needed to know that he wouldn't leave me like that again, that he wouldn't doubt me so easily. His response floored me. Instead of comforting me or trying to understand where I was coming from, he looked at me with suspicion in his eyes and said, "Your answers don't make sense to me. Why are you so against this? What are you hiding?" I felt like I'd been slapped. Here I was, opening up, pouring out my heart, and instead of hearing me, all Jake could do was accuse me. I didn't know what to do. How could he not see what this was doing to me? How could he not realize that pushing me into something I wasn't ready for would only drive us further apart? I started to doubt everything. Had our relationship always been this fragile? Was I wrong to think we could fix things after what happened? I had been so sure that if we worked on it, we could get back to where we were before his father's lies. But now, it felt like we were spiraling out of control again, this time in a different direction. I began to wonder if this relationship was even worth saving. I loved Jake, there was no question about that, but love isn't enough if there's no trust. And right now, it felt like trust was the one thing we didn't have. How could we bring a child into this world when we couldn't even believe in each other? I tried talking to him again the next morning, but his walls were up. He wouldn't budge from the idea of having a baby. It was like he couldn't hear me, couldn't see the pain I was in. All he could see was his own desire to move forward, and my hesitation was making him paranoid. He started throwing accusations at me, saying things like, "Are you seeing someone else? Is that why you don't want a baby with me?" It was as if we were back to the day his father accused me of cheating, and I was living that nightmare all over again. I didn't know how much more of this I could take. I felt trapped between my love for Jake and the growing realization that maybe, just maybe, this relationship wasn't going to work. I wasn't ready to give up, but I didn't know how to fix something that felt so fundamentally broken. A part of me wanted to scream, to shake him and make him see how much his actions were hurting me. But another part of me felt exhausted, like I had been fighting this battle alone for too long. I didn't know if I had the strength to keep going. That night, as I lay awake in bed beside him, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if this was the end. Could we find a way to trust each other again, or had too much damage been done? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't ready to bring a child into this mess, not until we found a way to heal what was broken between us. The next morning, I made a decision. I told Jake that I needed space to think, to figure out what I really wanted. He didn't take it well, of course. He accused me again, saying my need for space was just another excuse. But I stood firm. I told him that if we didn't take a step back now and really work on our issues, having a baby wouldn't solve anything. It would only make things worse. As I left the house that day, my heart felt heavy with the weight of everything that had happened. I loved Jake, but I also knew that love wasn't enough if we couldn't rebuild the trust that had been shattered. And if he couldn't understand that, then maybe it was time for me to walk away, for good.
Relevant comment. Your husband wants you to get pregnant because he's insecure and feels like that will tie you to him. He seems to be suspicious, and it's not coming from a healthy place. You should sit him down and talk to him. Let him know how much what his father did hurt you. Ask him if he even feels bad about it. Remind him that making big decisions, like having a baby, is something partners should do together. Is he really ready to be your partner? Also, it's very important to protect yourself. Keep your birth control in a safe place, or consider getting something like an IUD to make sure it can't be tampered with. Comment. I don't trust that your husband has completely let go of the harmful ideas his dad has been feeding him. Some men believe that getting a woman pregnant will prevent her from cheating, but it's even more dangerous because it binds you to him forever through the child. Be extremely careful with your birth control. When he's this insistent and doesn't respect your feelings, there's a chance he could try to mess with your birth control to trap you into pregnancy. Don't rely on condoms alone, they can be tampered with or slip off. Even birth control pills can be messed with. You should look into more secure options like the shot, an implant, or an IUD. Don't let him trap you with a baby. Get counseling and ask him to be honest about whatever his father has been saying to make sure you stay loyal.